Today I'd like to share with you guys how I cook my beans using my Instant Pot. I love cooking dried beans for a lot of different reasons. They're a lot cheaper than buying canned beans and a lot healthier. If you cook your own beans, I don't put any salt in mine, so that's one of the benefits. It's obviously a lot less sodium than canned beans. They also taste a lot better. If you've never liked beans, it could possibly be just because they're canned. I couldn't believe the difference once I started getting used to eating fresh ones that I cooked, and then one day I actually ran out, went and bought some canned ones, and I couldn't believe the difference. So I'm definitely sold on eating fresh ones. Now you might think, well, who has time to cook dried beans every time I want some beans? Well, one thing you can do that I do is, which is a nice benefit of having an Instant Pot, is I cook them in big batches, and then once they cool, I freeze them in individual Ziploc bags, lay them flat in my freezer, and I have a whole stack of them in my freezer, all different kinds, black beans, white beans, chickpeas, and pinto beans. So when I need a can of beans, I just head to the freezer, grab a Ziploc, and I'm ready to go. So the first thing that I think is important if you want to cook your own beans from dried that I wanted to talk about is there's two options. You can either put dried beans straight into an Instant Pot with water and cook them. That's definitely an option. It will take a lot longer because the beans are dried, but that's the option. The second option is to soak your beans first in water. If they're soaked, then they will cook a lot faster. That's the method I use. I like soaking my beans first in water, and for a few different reasons. After researching, I found out that if you soak your beans in water, for one, it gets rid of a lot of the phytic acid that is in beans, and what phytic acid does is it inhibits the absorption of the minerals that are in beans, like iron, zinc, and calcium. So just by simply having your beans soaked in water, your body will be able to absorb those nutrients better. So obviously that's a big plus. If you're buying canned beans, those beans have not been soaked first, so they're not going to be as nutritious. The other benefit of them being soaked is it has been shown to help in overall digestibility of the beans, so a lot less bloating and gas, so that's obviously a big plus there as well. And then lastly, if they're soaked, like I already mentioned, it's gonna speed up the cooking time, so that's obviously a bonus right there. All right, so these are my soaked beans. These are navy beans. I've just soaked them overnight. It's real easy, right? Just before you go to bed at night, throw a few cups of beans in a bowl, fill them completely with water, put a few inches more water than the beans are, because of course they're going to absorb the water and expand. So you want plenty of water in your bowl. Just throw them in the fridge. I don't recommend leaving them on the counter because that's how bacteria can grow in lukewarm water. So just throw them in the fridge, and then the next day is when they'd be plenty ready to cook. So here I'm just going to drain the beans. If you do have time, then changing out the water in the bowl and refilling it, giving it fresh water, will increase the amount of phytic acid that is pulled from the beans, and can also just increase help with digestibility. So sometimes what I do is I'll even soak them longer than just overnight, and that way I can change out the water a few times. I use filtered water, so that's definitely what you want to use there. All right, so now that we've just drained our beans, we'll be ready to go and put them in the Instant Pot. All right, so I soaked 4 cups of beans yesterday, and they've been soaking all day today. I did change out the water a few times. Just every time I thought about it, put some fresh water in my bowl, switched out the water. As far as how much water you should put in the pot, you don't need to cover them with water because they've already been soaked. The more water you put in this is honestly just gonna take longer for the pot to actually come to pressure and just make the overall cooking process take longer. So there's no need to do that. For each cup of dried beans that you put in your bowl to soak, you'll need about 1/2 cup to 3/4 cups of water for the actual cooking process. So I've got about 2.5 cups here of filtered water that I'm going to go ahead and pour in like so. And now I'm not going to add anything else. I don't add salt. I don't add any spices since I'm not sure what I'll be, using the beans for. And now we're just going to go ahead and seal it. Like I said, today I'm cooking navy white beans, and they usually cook in about 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and set my timer for 5 minutes. Let's go ahead. Oh, technical difficulties here. One moment. All right. Had to make sure my pot was actually plugged in. Okay, so I'm gonna set it for 5 minutes. And now I can go get some other stuff done. Just set your pot and go. Okay, so my Instant Pot has just beeped. It's finished cooking. The beans took 17 minutes to come to pressure, and then if you remember correctly, I had it set for 5 minutes. So it ultimately took 22 minutes in all for it to come to pressure and to cook. So now all you want to do is press the cancel button. And now, especially with beans, what you want to do is just let the pot completely release its pressure naturally. Don't try and release the pressure now. More than likely, your beans will explode in the pot and get all mushy, and you want to keep the beans intact. So you don't usually want to do this probably late at night because you'll need to be able to take the beans out before you go to bed. So something to do in the morning is usually a great time. In the morning when you get your beans out of the fridge from soaking all night, throw them in the Instant Pot, and then that way, if they have plenty of time throughout the day where you can let the pressure come out and you're not in any kind of time crunch. All right, so now I'll just let the beans the pressure release naturally, and I'll come back and check on them in a little while. Okay, so the Instant Pot has finally released all its pressure naturally. It's been 43 minutes that it took to do that. Again, I know this whole process with the beans seems like it's taking forever, but most of the time it's not actual hands-on time with the beans. So when the Instant Pot is releasing its pressure, you can be doing anything else in the house. You can go do errands, whatever. So don't let that be a deterrent to doing this process. So it's been 43 minutes. Now we're just going to go ahead and unlock it and open up the lid. There you go. Careful not to burn yourself. And now we're going to drain the water from the beans. Okay, so definitely use a rag to hold this because it's extremely hot. Being careful not to burn yourself. Just gently pour all of the water out into a colander. I love this colander because it sits right over the edge of your sink, but of course any colander should do. And then if you want to just run some cold water over them is what I usually do. You can see here. It's really good. All right, now what I'll probably just do is just let these beans sit here over the sink for a while, just to let them fully cool, because of course they're extremely hot right now. Once they're fully cool, I will then split them into 1 can portions into Ziploc bags. 1 can of beans is approximately 1.5 cups of beans, so that's how much I put in each Ziploc bag. When they're finished cooling, we will work on that. Welcome back. Our Great Northern beans are now completely cooled. I actually ended up putting them in the fridge last night. It was getting pretty late once I was feeling ready to go to bed, and they hadn't finished cooling yet. So instead of waiting up, one thing you can do if that happens to you is just literally take them, put them in a bowl and throw it in the fridge. And you can always just do it the next day. So that's what I'm doing now. So what I do is, like I think I mentioned before, I just use these Ziploc bags, the freezer ones. And we're going to take 1.5 cups of beans, because that's approximately how much is in a can. So whenever you're going by a recipe that calls for a can of beans, you'll already have it measured out. So just stick 1.5 cups in your Ziploc bag. Go ahead and seal it. And then what you want to do is just lay the beans flat like so. And then what I do is I actually use one of these plastic shoe boxes that you can get at Dollar General and place them flat in the box like this. And then that way I have them organized by the type of bean in my freezer. I do have a full-size freezer in our garage, so obviously you'll only be able to do something like this if you do have a lot of freezer space. But if you do, I highly recommend this method, because you can have all your beans, like I said, organize them by type of bean and then just stuck them in your freezer like so. It works really easy as far as being able to find them, and you won't ever get stuck with, by accident, putting a bag of frozen black beans in your smoothie because you thought they were blueberries. So anyway, that's it pretty much for as far as cooking dried beans in your Instant Pot. Soaking them first, cooking them up, and getting them in your freezer. It might seem like this took quite a long time, but again, honestly, it wasn't very much hands-on time, just a lot of time in between. So when you're a busy mom, it honestly is easy to do because you can kind of just work on it as you have a moment. I hope you try it and enjoy your beans.